Our Super Mario Odyssey analysis is long. Really long. Like an hour and a half long. So in case you haven't had time to watch the entire thing, we're breaking it up into smaller parts for you to enjoy. And in this excerpt, we're going to analyze the heck out of New Donk City, so let's dive on in. Anyways, the view from up here is so good in fact that we were able to stitch together a picture that offers a nearly complete look at the city. So complete in fact that we can use it to map out where every single city scene takes place. So let's go ahead and start going through it scene by scene, pointing out details you might have missed, while mapping it all out at the same time, Breath of the Wild style. Yeah, we take our analysis very seriously here at GameXplain. Okay, so the trailer of course opens with a taxi speeding past the camera, at a speed much faster than every other cab in the city. You can even hear it squealing around the corner ahead and see its weight shift onto the outside tires. What the heck is its deal? Is it trying to get away from something? And did you notice that as it speeds past, it actually blows some gravel around, which you can even hear? That's a pretty impressive detail. Mario then enters a scene from a manhole immediately after, which just so happens to be down the street from the Empire State Building-like tower, which as it turns out is the same tower that Mario leapt from, giving us that amazing view. So if we go to our map, that tower is right here at the bottom, and the manhole that Mario pops out of is at the opposite end of the street right here. So let's go ahead and mark that manhole with a Mario head icon indicating Mario's starting point. And here's a little arrow to show the direction that the camera is facing to. Now we can see that the spot Mario enters from is basically at the edge of the world, with almost nothing behind it. Which is pretty interesting considering the fact that Mario takes off in that very same direction after he pops out of the manhole. So why? Is he chasing after that taxi perhaps? That taxi was trying to get away in a hurry after all, suggesting it might have something or someone of importance inside. Then again, maybe Mario's just trying to get to his airship, which can be found on a building just across that gap that he's running toward. Except there's one little problem. We can see that airship fly by at the very start of the trailer just seconds before Mario appears, meaning it hasn't landed yet. So what's the deal here? Has Mario not met up with the ship or the magic hat yet? We're guessing so, because why else would that ship be flying by itself? And to add credence to this idea, we can see a column of light shining from the airship in the scene where Mario jumps from the tower. And this is the only time in the entire trailer that the airship glows like this, which strongly suggests it's an objective that Mario hasn't yet reached, at all. So we're guessing that getting to that airship might be one of Mario's first objectives. And if that's the case, that would also likely mean that this scene takes place near the start of the game, and that this level might be where Mario first meets up with the hat and the airship. And it kinda makes sense because New Donk City seems like a perfect introductory level, in that there are no enemies to be found here at all. Well, at least not yet, but more on that in a bit. And by the way, did you notice that even though the manhole drops back down, it doesn't actually return to its spot, leaving the hole exposed? Could this maybe hint that the sewers might be an important part in getting around? Kind of like how they were in Mario Sunshine's Delfino Plaza? There are manholes all over the place after all. At any rate, the road between here and the tower that the taxi raced it down is Cranky Street, which we can tell by the street sign right here. And we can also see that the cross street is Dixie Street, being this roadway right here. Which is also where all those Donkey Kong themed businesses that we pointed out before are located. But there's one more big thing there that we haven't mentioned yet. A giant banner for Crazy Cap. Except we don't think it's just a banner, but the store itself. Because if we look close, it looks like there's an entrance made of glass just below, complete with a scrolling marquee that says, "Go Cap Crazy." Come on, this has to be a place where Mario can swap hats, right? And it seems to be a fitting location because it's not only close to where Mario pops out of, but it's also pretty close to the airship's landing pad too. Now right next to the Crazy Cap store is a light bulb with an electric symbol on it, and it's connected via a wire or pole to another just above. Now that electric symbol is just like the one that we spotted in the desert town back in the original Switch reveal trailer. This seems to suggest that electricity will play some kind of role in the game, so we're pretty sure they can interact with it in some way. We're just not entirely sure how. Maybe one of the hats to get a Crazy Cap is the key? Now to the right of Mario, we can see some grass, which as it turns out is part of an entire park in the corner here as shown on our map. And we're pretty darn sure that that park is called Squawks Park, based on the Squawks Park street sign for the adjacent street. A street which, by the way, appears to wrap around the entire park. And that park is exactly where the rope skipping scene takes place. See, there's the same street sign and the tower at the end of Cranky Street. And speaking of Cranky Street, quite a few of the clips either take place on it or near it, which makes sense seeing as it's a major throughway. So first up is this scene that shows Mario running away from the tower toward the manhole that he popped out of. So let's go ahead and mark this on the map as location 2. And again, here's an arrow showing the direction that the camera is facing toward. Now, if we pause it here, we can see another light in the back that also has an electric symbol on it, like the one before. And in this scene, we can see that it too is connected to another light on the rooftop via a wire or pole. So what are those about? At any rate, we'll mark this as location 3 on our map. This next clip shows Mario just a little farther down Cranky Street, facing toward the tower and away from the manhole that he entered from. And we can see the airship on the building behind that, complete with a column of light. So we'll mark this as location 4. And you see that street sign down there? That's Espresso Street, which is this road on the map. But we'll have more on that in just a second. Now at the start of this clip, we can see a rooftop with a water tower and some construction barrels on it, which is the exact rooftop that Mario leaps from in this scene to reach another building. Specifically, these 2 buildings on the map. He jumps from here to here. So we'll mark this as location 5. You can even see the same water tower and construction barrels from up here. And while we're looking at our map, take note of the red girders hanging off the right side of the city, because they're the same girders that we can see in the background of this scene, which also offers a better look at Espresso Street, even if Mario isn't on it himself. Instead, he's wall jumping between 2 buildings, specifically these 2 on the map. And yep, one of them's a building he leapt to in the previous clip. So let's mark this as location 6. Also, we can just barely see a checkpoint flag on the building in the back by the water tower, which is right here on the map. This next clip takes us back to ground level on Cranky Street, with Mario flinging himself toward the base of the tower, which puts it right here on the map as location 7. And we can see that the tower has a rather grand looking entrance, complete with a plaza. Now it's a bit tough to see the words written in the grass here, but if we go back to this scene, we can see it says New Donk City, and has the same skyline logo as on the banners that we mentioned earlier. And just behind it is another checkpoint flag in the center of the plaza, meaning this is probably a pretty important area. But we'll have a lot more to say about the tower in just a couple minutes. But let's finish up our tour of the city first. So next up is this clip that shows Mario running along the left side of the tower's plaza toward Cranky Street. We can even see the checkpoint flag in the tower plaza here too. So that will put Mario right here on the map as location 8. Unfortunately, we weren't able to figure out what the name of this street is since the sign is impossible to read in every shot of it. But this next shot on the opposite side of the plaza is a bit more fruitful. So for reference, that's a tower, and here's a checkpoint flag, putting Mario right about here on the map as location 9. And that clip reveals 2 more street names. The street Mario's on is Ramby, which we're assuming runs from here up to Cranky Street, and the cross street Mario turns onto is K. Rool, which connects to Espresso Street, and could possibly continue on to Dixie. But since we're not sure about that, we won't mark it that far on the map. This area is also where the woman with the laptop is working that we pointed out earlier, just at the base of the tower. And by the way, keep a close eye on the construction pylon right here, because it wiggles as Mario runs past, showing that they're interactive. Again, it's a small touch, but it's kinda cool. Now we actually get a top-down view of Ramby Street in this shot, with Mario climbing along the edge of this building, which is just across from the tower. See, there's a tower plaza right down there. So we'll mark this as location 10 on our map. Now it is worth noting how thick that ledge is that Mario's holding onto, which we're guessing means he won't be able to grab onto the smaller ones below, although we can't see a similarly thick one near the base. Alright, there's only one more city scene to place, and this one's pretty self-explanatory, as Mario takes off in his airship from the very location that we've already pointed out, being this building in the back. Now based on the angle, we can see that the airship has its back to the city. See, there's a tower, Cranky Street, and right about there should be the manhole that Mario popped out of. And after the airship takes off, we can see that it had landed on an actual helipad. Cool! But here's a question, how the heck do you get to or from the airship? I mean, that's quite a gap from the main city. Okay, now we should mention that the helipad appears to be high enough that you might be able to jump from it to the main city. But what about getting back, or even getting to the airship for the first time? Well, in this case, our only guess is that the red girders are involved in some way. We can see they lead from the helipad to a tower seemingly made out of the same red steel as the girders. So maybe Mario can use the sewers to reach the base of that tower and then climb up to the airship? We're just spitballing here because we have no idea. And then there's a red block in the building over here too. What's that about? And speaking of girders, how did the ones on the left and right sides of the city factor in? The ones on the left appear to lead down to a platform at city level with a blue tarp, whereas the ones on the right seem a bit more ambitious, stretching beyond what we can see. Although we can see another blue tarp over there as well. So do those girders lead anywhere important off camera? Now, as we mentioned earlier, we do get another look at those girders in this scene, where we can see some gold coins inside, which suggests that Mario can walk through some of them. Okay, so we're almost done with our general overview of the city, but there are a few more interesting details I wanted to point out before we move on. So first up, this is clearly a bustling city with pedestrians everywhere and taxis roaming the streets. Except, it may not be quite as bustling as it seems. And no, not just because every vehicle is a taxi. What's the deal with that anyway? Does no one own a personal car around here? At any rate, it looks like those taxis really get around town, as they're visible in almost every scene. But as it turns out, their range may not be quite as robust as it seems, and not just because the majority of the streets are one-way too. Instead, it seems the taxis follow a strict pattern with extremely limited movement. Let's take Cranky Street for example, which is a major two-way arterial. Or is it? Because as it turns out, the cars mostly only drive down it in a single direction, away from the tower, effectively making it a one-way street. And we have this jerk right here to thank for it. He decided to park his taxi right in the middle of the lane. Yeah, he doesn't move at all, as it's always in the exact same spot in every scene, such as here, here, and here. And since it doesn't move, there's no way for cars to get around it, and the cars don't even try to either, effectively making it a dead road in that direction. But hold up, what about the taxi right here? It's clearly heading up Cranky Street toward the tower. That is until it turns onto Squawks Park, which is a one-way road. So our guess is that this single taxi simply circles a park endlessly. We can even see it turning onto that same street in a few other clips, again and again. Yeah, that's a little weird, but in a nice touch, the cab driver does at least use his turn signal when turning. I guess this isn't really like New York at all. Using turn signals? What? Okay, so if Cranky Street really isn't a proper two-way road, is there one that is? Well, as it turns out, yeah, there sure is. Espresso Street, which is the only true two-way road here. We can see taxis from Ramby Street turning almost directly onto it, as other cabs turn off of it to head down Cranky Street. And this is the only place where two moving cars will pass each other. Now those northbound cars then all presumably turn onto Dixie Street, both because we can see one doing that in this scene, but also because there's nowhere else for them to go, because of that taxi right there, which is also parked and not going anywhere, as confirmed in this scene. And since that taxi is right behind where Mario pops out of the manhole, could it possibly be the same taxi that made the getaway at the start? At any rate, the cars that turned onto Dixie Street then almost certainly turn down whatever street this is, which unfortunately is one of the few streets that we don't get close-up look at all. Although once again, it could possibly be a continuation of K. Rool. But we can see that mystery street leads to Espresso Street, where the cars will then turn right, passing those who turn from Ramby, before returning to Cranky Street in a presumably endless circle. And speaking of circles, we expect the same of the cars turning from Ramby onto Espresso, before turning onto K. Rool, which we can see here, which connects back to Ramby. Alright, so that covers it for most of the streets, except for this one left of the tower, which we weren't able to see a name for either. And as it turns out, this one also has a parked taxi blocking the way, which we verified doesn't move in this scene, making this street another dead end. Which isn't exactly a huge surprise considering there's no way for cars to reach it from Cranky Street because of that other parked cab that we talked about earlier. Plus, even if they could go down this street, there's nowhere for them to go except off the cliff there. Oh, and in case you're wondering, yeah, the taxi on the opposite side of the plaza is parked as well, as verified in this scene, which confirms no cars will be going that way either. So, as you can see, the taxis all seem to have a set path that, as far as we can tell, they don't stray from. Which raises the question of, who's taking these taxis anyway? We don't see anyone get in or out of them, and they'll only take you a block or two away. Well, whatever, they're really more for Mario's benefit than anyone else's anyway, since they serve as roaming trampolines for him to reach new areas. Like those green fire escapes that we can see scattered all over the city. Now, fire escapes in real life aren't generally brightly colored, so we're pretty sure that's by design to draw your attention and that they're essential in Mario getting around and climbing these buildings. In addition, we can see that they'll sometimes have collectible purple coins on them, as well as wooden crates that Mario can probably use as a platform and maybe even break into for some goodies. Now, even though the taxis seem to have predictable patterns, they do react to what's going on around them, in that they'll stop if anyone gets in their way, including Mario, which is actually another key difference from the real New York. Yeah, they don't stop for anything there. And you can even see how the taxis wait just realistically during a sudden stop. Neat! Now, before we move on, let's talk about the people real quick. And they're everywhere, roaming around, crossing streets, using a laptop, or playing jump rope in the park. Now, we don't see Mario interact with them too much directly, but Nintendo has confirmed in a Japanese stream that he'll be able to bounce off of them similar to the taxis. Yeah, that's probably going to cause some neck problems. Beyond that, we can see a woman raise her arm as Mario runs past. We're just not sure if that's an automatic animation or if it's in reaction to Mario. But in either case, it does at least show that the citizens will have animations beyond just walking around. And with that, we're finally done covering the city, during the daytime. Because as it turns out, Mario will be exploring that same city at night too. But that's going to have to wait for our next segment. Or if you just can't wait, you can watch our analysis in its entirety right now. There's a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching, and make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already for more on Super Mario Odyssey and everything Nintendo Switch.